All right, let's kick off this deep dive. We're cracking open a gift to my children today. It's a treasure trove of advice from the renowned investor and globetrotter Jim Rogers, initially penned for his daughters, but thankfully shared with the world.
It's fascinating. Rogers combines financial wisdom with sharp observations of human behavior. Plus, he has those global insights from his early retirement travels.
Exactly. The book's core is think for yourself. Rogers really hammers this home with a story about a dinner with Wall Street colleagues. Imagine you're surrounded by these finance gurus, everyone buzzing about the next hot stock. Rogers throws out Lockheed, an aerospace company others had dismissed.
His peers scoffed, of course, caught up in the herd mentality, chasing fleeting trends. But Rogers, he'd done his research. He saw potential in Lockheed's shift toward electronic warfare systems, recognizing the growing defense spending. 6 years later, Rogers raked in substantial profits. It really highlights independent thinking and thorough due diligence.
And Rogers' experiences in China further illustrate this. Back in the 80s, the prevailing view on investing in China was bleak. Fears of government confiscation ran rampant. But Rogers, always the contrarian, journeyed through China multiple times, immersing himself in their culture.
His first-hand observations revealed a different picture. He found a nation with a strong savings culture, a renewed entrepreneurial spirit, and a young population eager to learn and build a future. A stark contrast to the outdated narrative pushed by Western media. Rogers recognized an economic powerhouse in the making.
His on-the-ground experience challenged the mainstream narrative, showing the importance of forming your own judgments. Reminds me of that diamond buying mishap in Namibia, where he ended up with a glass bead.
Oh, absolutely. A funny anecdote, but a potent reminder that expertise is crucial. A warning against blindly following trends and a lesson to invest only in what you truly understand. Rogers learned this the hard way, shaping his investment philosophy.
So, independent thinking and investing within your competence are vital. Let's pivot to Rogers' global perspective, particularly his insights on the BRIC countries, Brazil, Russia, India, and China, as a lens for predicting future trends.
When you look at the broader picture, you see Rogers' ability to spot emerging patterns. Not just chasing fads, but anticipating opportunities. He saw the vast, untapped potential of the BRIC nations, especially China.
He dives into his outlook on each BRIC nation. For Brazil, he's optimistic, anticipating growth in commodities like sugar and iron ore, driven by global demand for ethanol as an alternative fuel.
With Russia, however, he's wary. Despite its abundant natural resources, he labels its system outlaw capitalism, creating an unreliable investment environment. He even predicts further fragmentation, citing Chechnya's struggle for independence as a potential sign of instability.
Towards India, Rogers is more skeptical, criticizing its bureaucracy and inadequate infrastructure, especially compared to China. He even shares the story of traversing their national highway, riddled with potholes, traffic jams, and surprise animal encounters.
It's that vivid imagery that drives his point home. He readily shares these firsthand experiences, even the less glamorous ones, adding a layer of relatability and emphasizing personal observation.
And speaking of firsthand observations, Rogers was an early proponent of the commodities boom, directly linking it to China's rapid growth. China's demand for steel, iron ore, and copper surged, fueling global commodity demand.
His foresight here is striking. While others fixated on tech stocks, Rogers was already anticipating the next big wave. That ability to think ahead of the curve comes from understanding historical patterns and current events.
As he says in his book, everyone would be a millionaire if he could read a newspaper from the future. We can't predict the future, but we can glean insights by studying history. He advocates learning from the past to grasp the forces driving markets.
He stresses that history often repeats or shows recurring patterns. We should look for precedents, recognize echoes of the past in current events. For instance, he draws parallels between the dot-com bubble and earlier speculative frenzies like the railroad and automobile booms, all fueled by hype and inflated expectations.
And, don't forget, he shorted tech stocks right before that bubble burst. He also predicted the housing bubble, foreseeing the crash of the overheated real estate market. It's truly remarkable, his ability to foresee these events.
It makes you wonder, what does Rogers envision for the future? He dedicates a whole chapter to this look to the future. He explores rising nationalism and the possibility of nations, especially those with diverse populations, splintering. A future with more sovereign nations and greater global fragmentation.
One prediction that stuck with me is the rise of a women's era in Asia. He argues that skewed birth rates favoring boys in places like China and Korea will lead to a shortage of women. This demographic shift will empower women, allowing them to demand more freedom and equality, leading to profound changes.
It's a thought-provoking idea, highlighting Rogers' awareness of demographic trends and their potential consequences. He even emphasizes learning Mandarin, arguing it will be crucial for future success alongside English.
Amidst these discussions of economics and geopolitics, Rogers doesn't forget the personal side of life. He sprinkles the book with unconventional but insightful advice.
He tells his daughters to eat before grocery shopping to avoid impulse purchases and stresses good manners regardless of location. But he acknowledges cultural sensitivity, recognizing that good manners can differ across cultures.
And then there's his financial advice. He cautions against discussing money, both personal wealth and the cost of things. He emphasizes humility and letting actions speak louder than words.
He also highlights building good credit, advising his daughters to always repay loans on time or even early. Good credit, he stresses, is an asset, opening doors and creating opportunities.
And Rogers dives into a crucial part of investing, and frankly, life itself, understanding yourself. He dedicates a whole chapter to it, urging us to confront our weaknesses and learn from our mistakes.
He's incredibly candid about his own shortcomings as an investor. He readily admits to often anticipating trends too early, leading him to act prematurely.
He talks about this recurring pattern of getting caught up in market swings, buying high during euphoria and selling low in a panic. But over time, he learned to recognize these emotional patterns and act counterintuitively, resisting the herd. It's an impressive level of self-awareness.
And he doesn't shy away from detailing his missteps, like when he shorted oil after the 1978 oil shock, convinced prices would plummet. When war broke out between Iran and Iraq, oil prices soared, leaving him with a sizable loss. He blames this on insufficient research and failing to anticipate the geopolitical fallout.
His willingness to own up to those blunders is commendable. He acknowledges, analyzes, and learns from them. Recognizing our errors, he says, is essential for growth, both as investors and as people. It's by facing our mistakes that we can improve and make better decisions.
He warns against succumbing to mob psychology, even for experienced professionals. He observes that people tend to overreact to news, both good and bad, leading to irrational market behavior. He cites Japan's lost decade as an example where government intervention intended to help failing companies actually hindered the economy's recovery.
This creation of zombie companies' businesses kept afloat artificially prevents natural economic cleansing. Rogers contends that such intervention often does more harm than good in the long run.
He brings up the dot-com bubble again, highlighting how many got swept up in the hype, believing it was a new era where traditional valuations didn't apply. Rogers, however, saw it for what it was: mass hysteria fueled by wishful thinking.
He gives a fascinating analysis of how investor psychology can distort market perceptions. During periods of unbridled optimism, he notes, people often ignore fundamental metrics like book value, earnings, dividends, leading to hugely inflated valuations.
He also explores the opposite, selling hysteria, how panic drives prices down dramatically, often far below a stock's real worth. He advocates selling during exuberance and buying during fear, basically buying low and selling high. A timeless principle, but, as he admits, much harder to execute than it sounds.
It demands discipline, patience, and a profound understanding of market dynamics. Also a degree of emotional detachment, the ability to step back from the frenzy and objectively assess the situation.
Which brings us back to self-knowledge. Rogers stresses that recognizing our emotional triggers, our tendencies towards greed or fear, is paramount for making sound investment choices. He even suggests analyzing stock charts to gauge the level of hysteria or panic in the market.
Not advocating relying solely on technical analysis, rather using charts as a tool to confirm his observations of the broader economic landscape. It's about synthesizing multiple perspectives, fundamental analysis, technical analysis, and most importantly, an understanding of human behavior.
Speaking of human behavior, Rogers is a firm believer in adapting to change. He observes that everything is in flux: economies, societies, even national borders. He points to the fall of the Soviet Union as a prime example, having personally witnessed the cracks in the communist system and its inability to defy the fundamental economic principle of supply and demand.
It's a powerful point. He argues that no system, no matter how entrenched, can ignore the basic laws of economics. Those who cling to the past, resist change, are destined to be left behind.
He also cautions against clinging to declining industries or outdated technologies, the need to look ahead, identify areas where growth is likely to occur, and he's not afraid to make bold predictions. Remember his assertion that Mandarin will become the next global language.
Absolutely. It really embodies his forward-thinking approach. He encourages his daughters and all of us to be adaptable and open to new possibilities. He even suggests the world will become increasingly fragmented, with more sovereign nations emerging, painting a picture of a more complex but potentially more dynamic global landscape.
In addition to these pronouncements about the future, Rogers offers practical, everyday advice. He encourages his daughters to learn skills like typing and sewing, skills he regrets not having himself. He stresses the importance of punctuality, maintaining a healthy work-life balance, and practicing good manners.
It's a blend of the personal and global, practical and philosophical. He's not just giving financial wisdom, he's equipping his daughters with tools to navigate a constantly changing world. It's amazing how he combines these grand predictions about the future with really practical, everyday advice.
Right, like encouraging his daughters to learn skills like typing and sewing, things he wishes he'd picked up himself. He emphasizes being on time, having a good work-life balance, and practicing good manners.
Exactly. It's this fascinating mix of the personal and the global, practical and philosophical. He's not just imparting financial wisdom, he's equipping his daughters to navigate an ever-changing world.
It's what makes A Gift to My Children such an engaging read, a testament to independent thinking, lifelong learning, and embracing life's adventures. And he doesn't stop there. He wraps up the book with a collection of additional wisdom in the epilogue.
It's like a rapid-fire rundown of insights covering everything from personal finance and social graces to, well, relationships. It feels like he distilled his life experience into these key principles for a successful and fulfilling life.
For instance, he advocates always buying quality items, noting their durability and how they hold their value over time. He also suggests avoiding conversations about money, both in terms of how much you have and the cost of things, emphasizing humility and letting actions speak for themselves.
He offers practical tips like always eating before grocery shopping to avoid impulse buys and steering clear of anything touted as a must-see or must-read, especially if it's trendy. Remember, think for yourself. He even recommends mastering mental math and using the restroom before long drives or public appearances.
He emphasizes good manners, acknowledging their enduring relevance across the globe, but he also cautions against neglecting cultural sensitivity, recognizing that what's polite in one place might not be in another.
And he stresses the importance of good credit, advising his daughters to always repay loans on time or even earlier. Good credit, he emphasizes, is an asset that opens doors and presents opportunities.
He advises learning to type and sew, skills he regrets not acquiring himself. He underscores the value of staying calm under pressure, being punctual, and setting boundaries between work and personal life. He even cautions against workplace romances, citing their potential for complications.
He even delves into relationship advice, offering a mix of caution and lighthearted humor. He reminds his daughters that boys need them more than they need boys, urging them to ignore extravagant promises and stay true to themselves. He even jokingly warns against the pitfalls of singles bars, claiming the bartenders are the real winners there.
Those moments of levity make his advice so relatable and engaging. He comes across not as a stern father figure, but a wise and witty mentor sharing life lessons.
And in a final thought, he encourages his daughters to prioritize their well-being, both physical and emotional. He emphasizes self-awareness, knowing your strengths and weaknesses, and staying true to yourself. It's a powerful message of self-acceptance and embracing life's journey.
So if we were to boil down Jim Rogers' A Gift to My Children into 10 key takeaways, they might be: 1. Think independently. 2. Invest in what you understand. 3. Embrace change. 4. Study history. 5. Know yourself. 6. Question conventional wisdom. 7. Have good manners. 8. Manage your finances wisely. 9. Be true to yourself. And 10. Take care of yourself.
It's a phenomenal collection of wisdom, drawn from a life full of adventure, investment success, and perhaps most significantly, fatherhood.
And while he wrote it for his daughters, his advice holds value for all of us, no matter our age or background. It's a reminder to approach life with curiosity, courage, and a commitment to constant learning.
If these glimpses into Jim Rogers' wisdom intrigue you, I highly recommend diving into the full book. It might just change how you view investing, life, and the world around you. Until our next deep dive, keep learning and keep growing.